I'm Ray Cleary, your senator, hopefully, and I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me today on my webpage and choosing this. This is something that will be coming up this year, and it will be coming up in the future. And what I'm talking about right now is early voting and voting ID. There's a lot of controversy on voter ID. You know, is it necessary? Should it be done? Whatever. And I have several issues that go back and forth on voter ID that I'd kind of like to talk to you about, because that's probably the controversial issue on that compared to voting early. I think up in the legislature you're going to see that we all believe in the ability to vote early. And when we say to vote early, that means to include at least one Saturday. Do it 15 days ahead of time. A lot of times when we're campaigning to try to get our message to you, it's becoming interesting that if we let you vote 3 months ahead of time, or 6 weeks ahead of time, or a month ahead of time, it's hard to tell when do we get that message to that person, especially with the ability to vote at different times. But all in all, we believe that the public benefits from the ability to vote a little bit early. And so we think voting early is a very, very healthy situation, and it's something that I will support in South Carolina. But voting early does not mean voting often. And I think that's an issue, because in the old days, when you voted, and you voted on a Thursday or you voted on a Saturday before the election, and you went to your precinct, but especially when you voted the day of the election, you know, those precinct people knew who you were. They were your neighbors, they were your friends. You sat in a line and they knew everybody. And so because of that, it was maybe a little more difficult to say, well, you know, that's not Joe Bob over there, or that's not Betty Lou over there, because you're in line with people that are your neighbors. You're in that same precinct. But voting early changes all that. You go to a central location where you have no neighbors or neighborhood, and you go down and you say, I'm Rhett Butler or Brad Pitt, and you know, I'd like to vote. And so that is why I think when you do early voting, you also have to include voter ID. Now, there's 2 states that already allow voter ID. Georgia does it, and Indiana does it. The Supreme Court and different federal courts have said that it is constitutional. This is not anything that's going to create a lawsuit. It's being done in 2 other states. In fact, what's interesting is in Georgia, what they found was, and one of the reasons it passed muster was it could show that no group was disenfranchised by being asked to have an ID. Let me say that again. The court systems have found in the Indiana and the Georgia case that no one was kept from voting because he didn't have an ID. That's the main argument, that they don't want to do it. They will keep people from voting. In fact, that main argument gets blown away, because in Georgia, what they found in the last election was 8% more of the white population voted, 40% more of the black population voted, and 71% more of the Hispanic Latino voted. So actually their voting numbers increased when voter ID became basically the norm in those states. Some people ask about the cost of voter ID. I think you can address it on 2 different issues. Some of the costs that we are projected that we might have would indicate that we would have to give IDs to 850,000 people over a 5-year period, and we don't have but 2 million people voting. So does that mean that over half our voters that are 17 or over don't have IDs or driver's licenses? I find that difficult to accept. I also find it difficult to accept because that has not been a problem in Georgia and Indiana. So I am for voter ID. I think the other thing is that you ask is, what is the benefit of having an election that you know is sound and consistent, has been done well, and there's no fraud in it? That to get into some of these third world countries where elections, you know, are just like, well, you know who's going to win the election before they do it, because you know you can't trust the ballot box, you can't trust the system. This voter ID will allow people to sleep at night because they know that the system, for the most part, is something that they can trust, that they can believe in. And to be honest, at the end of the day, it's extremely important for people in any country, especially ours, to feel that their vote counts, that it's a secure vote, and it's another vote. But what I find is interesting is our forefathers set this country up for a lot of different reasons. And you know, they had some very good, brilliant ideas on how they did it. But I had an older fellow, because I was on the subcommittee that studied it, and I had the older fellow come up to us and he said, you know, this is probably one of the most cherished possessions that we can have as a citizen of the United States, or anybody in the world, to be able to vote and to know that your vote's going to count. And it's our most cherished possession that our forefathers gave us. In fact, when they gave it to us, they actually created some requirements that you had to own land or something, because they felt like it was such an important gift that they were giving you. And early voting aside, isn't it interesting that to ask citizens that on the one day a year, on the first Tuesday of the month in November, that they take some time out to keep this great country in the direction it's headed, probably isn't asking too much. But you know, voter IDs, I mean, nowadays you can't cash a check at a grocery store. You can't even get a dental appointment without having a driver's license or a voter card or an ID card. I talked to the people in my district in Horry County and Georgetown County alone, because I knew the election people there, and I said, how many non-quote driver's licenses you get? And they said less than 1%. So I think that early voting combined and married with voter ID will allow people in this country, in this state, to vote early, but also vote knowing that their vote counts and that the system will not be abused. I think it is a perfect marriage, and I hope that our legislature will be able to get this through. I think it's something that will benefit the entire state and in the community. So again, I hope this video explained my position on why voter ID is important, why early voting is something that I can support, but why, you know, voting is an essential right and privilege and a cherished possession that we have in the United States. Again, thank you for coming to my website, and thank you again for reviewing my video. Have a good day.